Good evening. It's a joy and a privilege and a pleasure to be with you this afternoon. I thank you for this honor, Mr. Rooks. As I was thinking back about our days at West Clinton, at that time it was called West Clinton Junior High, I thought about the old white frame building and pot-belly stove downstairs. We had to make fires. Had to make fires in the classroom. A lot of things came to my mind. I just don't have time to say it. Mrs. Cliff said, please make it short. So I haven't heard a short one yet, but I'll try to be obedient. I asked myself, what do you think of when you think about Mr. Rooks? And that's what we call him then, and that's what we call him now, Mr. Rooks. By the way, the only thing we have in common is you're a junior and I'm a junior also. But I said, well, I just had a few things that came to my mind. One was, he's a gentleman. The second one, an humble individual. The third thing I thought about was a sharp dresser. The next one was a basketball coach. And of course, at last, an educator. I say he was a gentleman because at that time, Mr. Rooks knew all of our families. He knew where we came from, and yet he had respect for all of us. And he demanded respect in return. Billy Glover once said, at that time he thought we were all hoodlums, but I don't think we were hoodlums. I think we were just mischievous, that's all. As a humble person, I always felt at ease with Mr. Rooks, someone I could talk to and share my problems with, because he always wanted to listen and he always wanted to help. Back during those days, in the classroom, Mr. Rooks left out of the class for a moment. And I got into a fight with a guy in the back of the room. And he came back in and caught us fighting. So he said, come up to the front, both of you. So we came up to the front of the classroom, and he took my hand and he bent it back like this. And he gave me 5 licks in that hand. But it hurt my pride more than anything else. So I went home and I told Dad, I said, Dad, I thought you said Mr. Rooks was our cousin. He said, well, he is. He said, what happened? I said, well, I got into a fight and he gave me 5 licks in my hand. He said, oh, you're grown now, huh? And I said, well, wait a minute, Dad, it's not like that. So then he proceeded to give me more than 5 licks, and it wasn't across my hand, it was across my backside. But anyway, that's how much we thought of him, and Dad thought so much of Mr. Rooks. Also, he was a sharp dresser. I say that because during that time, especially the guys in the class, I thought this man must have a closet full of clothes. Every time I see him, he got something different on. But I found out he only had 2 suits. But he had 2 suits, but he had so many different ties. He had a blue suit, as I recall, and a gray suit. But he could mix and match those up so. And with those ties, I tell you, you thought he had an awful lot of clothes when he only had 2 suits. But I said one thing. I said, when I get to be a grown man and working, I want to dress just like Mr. Rooks. And as a basketball coach, Mr. Rooks started our first little junior high team, and we didn't have any uniforms, and the girls' basketball team didn't have uniforms. So I never forget, he paid for those uniforms out of his own pocket. And I thought back then, well, you know, he's got all those suits, so that's not going to hurt him, you know. But I didn't realize it was a sacrifice for you. But and also, I wanted to be a basketball player, but God knows that just wasn't one of my gifts, wasn't my talents. And Mr. Rooks was able to buy 7 uniforms. And some of the better players were Billy Glover, Oscar Hewlett, Sammy Burks, Archie Jones, and Wilson Pettis. And there was one more guy, I was trying to think, C.P. Austin, I believe. But he had one uniform left, and I wanted that uniform. I'm telling you, I wanted that uniform. So he gave me that uniform out of pity, because I was not a basketball player. So I just decided, give that uniform to somebody else as much as I wanted, but I'll just be a cheerleader on the sideline. And finally, as an educator, I believe Mr. Rooks came to West Clinton as a student teacher along with Mr. Perry Ward, and there were other people. Also, I think about Mrs. Kelly, one of our favorite teachers, Mrs. Rice, and Mrs. Cashin was the principal at that time. But Mr. Rooks was always telling us, even then, how important it was to stay in school and how important it was to study. So I remember at the time, when I graduated from West Clinton, I went on and graduated from Council High. Then I wanted to go to A&M. But I had no idea what I wanted to take or what field I wanted to go into. So I decided I'd go by Mr. Rooks. So I went by and I said, you know my strength and you know my weaknesses, and what should I study? So he gave me some advice, and he not only suggested a major for me, he suggested a minor for me. So I took that all the way, I took that to his advice to A&M, and I wanted to impress him so to one of the first tests, one of the very few A's I got in my first year. But I remember on the test, I made an A, and I wanted to impress him, so I took that A, and I took it back to his house, and I said, see, I'm doing well, look at this is an A. And he said, yeah, that looks good. I said, now, bring me the bad ones too. And so, and he had a point there too. I didn't want to bring those bad ones back. But I guess finally I just want to say, Mr. Rooks, that Tommy said that you are our hero. You are very definitely our hero. And Mr. Rooks, we still love you. We always have. And the very best to you, and may God bless you. Thank you.